Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got another episode of New to the Nick for you, where basically I'm going to talk about some of the gear that has recently arrived on my table. All of this stuff is not stuff that I have really carried in any depth. All of this stuff is stuff I have not yet disassembled. And there's plenty of room for my final opinions to change, but the thing is, a lot of people have always asked, Nick, what are your thoughts on X? And this is a really good way for me to show that. So do keep in mind that the things that I mention here that might be good or bad will probably persist in the final review, but they might not, and I might fall deeper into or out of love with a piece during the process of carry, disassembly, etc. So keep an eye out for the full review, but these initial impressions will hopefully give you some information, at least give you something to keep an eye on, right? And maybe you can even check out other people's reviews on these items in the intermediate time if they beat me to the punch, which, let's be real here, given my schedule, they probably will. But anyways, so I want to talk to you about some of the stuff that's shown up on my table, and hopefully you'll find it interesting. Start off here with the CRKT Piet. This is the D2 steel model. So as much as I absolutely love seeing CRKT using D2, as opposed to some of the alphabet soup stuff that they're usually running, and you know what, this is actually a reasonably nice ergonomic design. It works pretty well in the hand, and it's kind of a good little tiny thing, right? It's in a very sort of conservative pattern, but it works out. They've got a nice thin edge here. There is some stuff to love about this. Unfortunately, it is running on Teflon washers for some reason, which really sets it up a limit of what kind of price tag is going to be acceptable. And by the way, a quick note on price. I actually don't know what any of these things on the table cost right now. You're welcome to share down in the comments if you'd like, but my goal is, as I'm doing this, is not to know the prices of the gear until it's actually time to do the review. The reason I say that is because, well, that revelation of like, oh, I think this should probably be like, okay, I think this should probably be like 45 or 50 bucks. Past that, that moment of revelation when I finally do find out the price, okay, that's really revealing. That's very helpful for me in my process. So I'm not going to be talking much about price here. But nonetheless, so it's an interesting piece, and it's a very nice sort of daily carry design, but at the same time, it's going to have to be pretty budgety in order to really make up for that. Here's a very different knife. This right here is the CRKT Provoke. This is the smallest size. I reviewed the Provoke before, and I personally hated the knife because it doesn't fill any of my needs, but I loved it because, oh my God, it's cool. The reason it's cool is, watch this. This is how you deploy it. Now it's out. Now you have this sort of carpet cutting blade. I believe the technical term is carumbit. But nonetheless, it is a very interesting knife. And seeing the original one, well, honestly, it's really cool to see one a little bit smaller, and I'm hoping that this being a little bit smaller will allow me to spend a little bit more time with it, to carry it and see whether I can find any practical utility for this kind of thing in my life. The quality on it seems to be just in line with what we had in the previous one. That is to say, it's good. This is a thing that doesn't feel like it's been cheaped to death. They've done it right, whether or not it is, whether or not it's practical for me. The one downside I notice immediately is that unlocking it is not great. You're kind of jamming your finger in here and pressing. I'd like to see maybe a little less spring tension on this because it's not straightforward to get in there and unlock, but I'm hoping that'll change as I do ideally a disassembly. Can I disassemble this? Well, that'll be a bridge to cross. But nonetheless, as I do that disassembly, I'm hoping that'll ease up a little bit, can make life a bit easier. But anyways, the original Provoke, and by the way, this is the pocket clip. If you squeeze, it lifts up. It's a weird knife, but I'm looking forward to spending some time with it just because the original one was so cool and so very different from what else is out there in the world. Let's go this direction just to confuse the English speakers used to going in this order. Okay, so this right here is the QSP Penguin. QSP is a brand that is really focused on the budgety of the budget. This is a higher-end offering. It's the QSP Penguin, but it's done in titanium. They've made a titanium frame lock out of the QSP Penguin. It is in 154 cm, which is a fine steel. I mean, in terms of budget steels, not a bad choice whatsoever. And overall, I mean, the pattern is nice. I gotta say, the thumb studs are super-duper long on this. Like, the thumb studs are much, much wider than the actual knife itself. And so they're it's the weirdest kind of pocket pecker I've ever dealt with. But the thumb studs, and they also, unfortunately, take the pattern of the Chris Reeves Shabazz of the very strong, like, ziggurat-shaped thing. Not great. But, that said, aside from the thumb studs, pretty nice so far. Looking forward to spending some more time doing this assembly, seeing how it works out. But so far, first impressions are decent. The big question, of course, here is going to be price, right? If they're aiming too high on the price tag, not so much. But at the same time, if they're able to come in at or around 80, 90, 100 bucks, I think this could be pretty compelling. Maybe if it goes higher, again, we'll see how the carry goes. Next one. Okay, this is the CRKT Ritual. So, I was just mentioning that this guy, the Provoke, is a knife that is very much not me. This is perhaps very much more not me. That said, it is spectacular. And I mean that in the sense of like, okay, this knife is really dumb. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's completely and totally ridiculous. It is a big old assisted knife with a gigantic Persian-style blade with all of these things. And you know what? It's kind of awesome, right? Every damn time I open this, I start laughing and or smile. And it's actually made reasonably well with some nice, reasonable polish on this little guy here. It's got actual micarta. This isn't just like G10. This appears to be a micarta on there. Things are reasonably well polished. A nice deep carry clip with countersunk screws, I just noticed, which is kind of nice, right? There's no... I'm actually... Low-key, I'm pretty impressed with this thing. Is it going to be a thing that I recommend for most people's everyday carry? No, that's not really on the menu here, but at the same time, I think if the price is right, and if they're really... Yeah, like I said, if I carry it, if it turns out to be this, then this might be something that it's like, I'm hoping this is at a price low enough that people are going to be able to jackass around with it. Buy one because it makes them laugh, have it in their collection to make them smile, maybe even use it, maybe even cut with it. But I think that's where this is going to land, and I think CRKT is really well positioned to do that, to offer really crazy things, but at prices that are low enough that it's not like, wow, I just spent 400 bucks on what? So I'm very much hoping they hit that nice price point. If this were like 80, 90 bucks, I think this could very easily, maybe even up to 100. End up, in that kind of category. It's almost, well, okay, it's a gimmick, but at the same time, I can see it being a gimmick that makes a lot of people smile. So it's sort of dumb, but at the same time, it's sort of awesome. And I don't know how to square those two things, but I don't need to. Next up, I actually have 3 knives from Hogue. For those of you who are asking for American-made knives, Hogue is one of those companies you should be taking a look at, and this is the Hogue, I believe, Trauma. So as somebody who knows a little something about trauma, this is... It's right familiar. Now, it's an interesting knife. It seems to be sort of directly countering the it's in the rescue knife sort of category, right? With a sheep's foot blade, which is going to be good. It's N690, N680, which actually I don't... Not as familiar with that particular grade of steel, but anyways, I'll do some research, do some looking around. But look, the knife itself is absolutely good to go. It's using a sliding bar style lock, which is good. It's got an oxygen wrench up at the top here. I believe that hole is that. It has a belt cutter at the back here, allowing you to use this to cut out, if you got somebody trapped in a car or something, cut the seatbelt, cut off clothing, something like that. And you've got yourself a window breaker in the back here in case, well, you need to break a window, right? But anyways, so it's very much in that sort of domain. It's up against I think the Spyderco Rescue, the Benchmade Triage. It's sort of in that realm. The question of whether it's going to be good for any other random jackass, I don't know that yet. I'll spend some time with it. One big disadvantage that I'm seeing immediately, though, is the fact that this clip is over this very strong... This is a very strong texture, and that makes sense in a lot of ways when you've got something that is, aimed at, for instance, the, fire department, where you're going to have water around. You're going to have oil. You're going to be dealing with those things, but I'd like to see a little area underneath the clip on both sides such that this gets in and out of the pocket a little bit easier. The clip itself is also a little bit on the lightweight side, but we'll see how that actually handles in practice. But anyways, so it's interesting. Another option in that case. Here I got a pair of automatic knives, switch blades. Press this button here after so you got a safety here preventing it. See, if I press the button now, nothing happens. Pull the safety back. Boom. Little tiny California legal, hence the bear here. Little tiny California legal automatic. This is their little micro flip. It's in CPM 154, which is a solid steel here. Ergonomically speaking, I don't know whether I don't yet know the right grip for it or whether it's going to be a trouble, but at the same time, right now it's a little challenging, so to speak. But at the same time, it is interesting. You've got yourself what appears to be a cap lifter in the back there, which is an interesting thing to do with the back here on a Cali legal piece. But anyways, it's an interesting, another little side-fire automatic choice, which is cool. And again, USA made, might be interesting. Next up is another Cali legal auto, and this is an out-the-front automatic knife. I don't really do much of these because honestly there really aren't that many options that are Cali legal and are using, standard hardware, that kind of stuff. So this is the Hogue, and they did this, by the way, without telling me about it, the gem. Hopefully it lives up to the name. But this is an out-the-front automatic knife. When you press this button forward, boom, out it goes. Then you pull it back, boom, then it goes. Out and in. This is very small to deal again with the California legalities, which state that any automatic knife must be under 2 inches of blade length, and indeed this guy is. But it's an interesting piece. One thing that's very strange about it is the asymmetry. Note that the blade is much higher up. Well, it's closer to one side of the handle than the other. It's not the end of the world. It's a little weird though. But anyways, and it is also very, well, it's pretty thick behind the edge, right? This is a relatively thick grind on a relatively small blade. They do okay with it, but that's definitely one of the downsides here. In terms of actuation, it's not particularly hard. I'm sure this sound will be driving my wife crazy as I get ready to, do this review. But it is very small, it is very carryable, and I'm looking forward to spending a little bit more time. It's been a little while since I did an out the front. One thing to note is that most out the front automatics, really the only one accepted here would be the Hawk Deadlock, which is, $1,000 style knife. You're going to have a little bit of play here. And indeed, you do have a little bit of vertical play, a little bit of horizontal play. That's just sort of the nature of the beast. It'll make more sense if you see the thing disassembled. But anyways, so that is definitely there. They haven't, gotten rid of that. But at the same time, yeah, works pretty well. And so initial impressions, cool. Looking forward to it. Next up, we got this little guy right here. This is the Kansept Knives Convict. This particular one happens to be in a Damascus, and this Damascus, I asked them the steel composition, and they told me, and hold on, I might even be able to pull that up quickly, but the steel composition at the time was like, oh, it's not bad at all. Let's see here, pull up my email on the device here. Anyways, it's a very interesting sort of overall design. I got no beefs with it. Let's see here. 9CR18 MOV and 440C is the mix of the two steels here. Both of those steels are good to go sort of budget steels, and seeing them merge together, and okay, sure, why not, right? The price is going to be the question here, as always, but the ergonomics on it are actually quite good. A straight Wharncliffe blade can be pretty interesting, and you know what? It's different. It's something a little bit unusual. I know already that I do not like this deployment mechanism. Having this big flat shelf here not only is having something big in the cutting path here, meaning that this last bit of blade is really not useful unless you're cutting at this kind of an angle. But, and it's also not symmetrical, so it's not there on the other side, so that means that you cannot flick this guy open with your back finger. This is basically acting like a thumb stud, but worse. But the design otherwise seems great, and, you might be able to put in an actual regular thumb stud in there, and maybe even have a better experience that way. But anyway, so it's an interesting piece, and I'm very curious, by the way, Yo Dog, I heard you like standoffs. Interesting piece, looking forward to spending a little bit more time with it. This is cool. This was sent to me by Steel Addiction. Actually, for full disclosure, all the Crickets were sent to me by Cricket. These three were sent to me by Hogue. This was sent to me by Kansept, by QSP. And this guy was sent to me by Steel Addiction Knives. So this is a run of knives. This is a Peña design, actually. I've looked at Peña's work many, many times before. Big fan of his. But check this out. It's a flipper. Now check this out. Where'd the flipper go? This is using the Lee Williams Kickstop method. It is, as you can see here, by the Kickstop little logo on the back here. This is something I've actually never taken apart before, but what we see here is it's got this little bit on the back here that is able to kind of flop about freely when you're in the middle of opening, but this allows you to, when the knife is closed, it serves as a stop pin. When the knife is open, it serves as a flipper tab. And so as a result, you end up with a knife that is a flipper, but that doesn't have the ergonomic penalties of a flipper. You can grip all the way up to the edge of the blade here. And that's a beautiful thing. Ergonomically, this feels like any other Peña. It just happens to have a flipper tab. Do I really appreciate having a big old pocket pecker hanging off the back of it? No. The one thing I will say about this is that this is going to make this line of Peña modern traditional kind of things a little bit more accessible to people who might have some fine motor issues, for whom going in there and doing the front flip motion is not going to be ideal, right? Who are not able to do that. This might be an easier bar for some people to clear. And so in that way, I think this is going to be interesting. And at the very least, I like this design. This blade shape is really cool because you got a little bit of flat, little tiny bit of belly, nice piercy point. I'm looking forward to giving this guy some pocket time, both because I like Peña's knives and I like, things in this pattern, and because this is the first Kickstop I've really spent any degree of time with, and I'm kind of excited about that. So anyways, we'll take a look at that. And then finally, last but not least, we got this little knife right here. You might be thinking to yourself, well, Nick, what's this thing off the back? Well, I'm thinking that one too, actually. I mean, it's a lanyard hole, but it's also... it's a pokey thing. I'm not 100% sure, but the real weird part about this is going to happen right now. It's a Razel. This is a Graham Knives Razel GT from CRKT. The GT standing here for Gentleman's Tactical. And what they've basically done here is it's a conventional, Warncliffe style blade, although it's got a little bit of belly at the tip here. But they've sharpened the top edge too, which makes this an excellent extra scraping blade. I'm a big fan of the Razel blade shape, generally speaking, and the big question here for me, this is actually an assisted knife, as is this guy down here. I think I mentioned that already. Meaning that, if you start it, it will spring itself the rest of the way open at a certain point. One of the big questions is, well, how's that work? Is that working out well? How's the CRKT assist? But the other big question is just like, how's the knife overall? How does this Razel kind of shape work when it's adapted to this guy? Big downside immediately is just the weight. This is a heavy guy with big, scales, big liners, assist, thick blade, big backspace. It's a heavy one, but at the same time, like I said, I'm curious. We'll see how this one carries after all over time. And of course, this thing at the back here, I'm going to be honest, that does nothing but drive me crazy. So, but that's something you could probably grind off if you wanted to. Anyways, so that's what I've had on my, that's what's new to the table recently. I'm sure I'll come up with some other stuff at some point in time here. The mail is, the mail never stops for me, unfortunately. And fortunately, I'm a lucky man. But that's what's brand new. Hopefully this has been interesting. If you got questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments there, and feel free to discuss what's jumping out at you. And I'll keep on reviewing, keep on chugging along, and hopefully you'll see full reviews of these guys coming up soon. So hope this has been interesting to you. Have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.